Welcome back, listeners. Today we'll be diving into the world of Margaret. She's a quilter, and how her life took an unexpected turn thanks to, of all things, Meals on Wheels.
It's a fascinating story, really, because it kind of gets at that question a lot of us have.
Which is?
How do we stay? How do we find purpose as we get older? And it's not just like some feel-good thing. There's actually a lot of research now about how, purpose later in life can actually be good for your health, both physically and mentally.
So there's real science behind this.
Okay.
I'm all ears. Tell me about Margaret.
Okay, so Margaret, she's been quilting her whole life. And these aren't just, casual hobby quilts. These are, in the source material, people describe them as pieces of art. And each one actually tells a story.
Oh, wow. Each quilt has its own unique meaning.
Exactly. They reflect different parts of her life.
Okay, so each quilt is like a chapter in her life story.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. But I understand she had to stop quilting at some point.
Yeah. Margaret developed arthritis. And you can imagine how tough that must have been. To love something so much and then suddenly, not be able to do it anymore.
I can only imagine. It must have felt like a huge loss, like a part of her was missing.
Exactly. And that's kind of where Meals on Wheels comes into the picture.
It's amazing to think that, a service that delivers meals could have such a big impact on someone's life beyond just, providing food.
Right. And that's a really important point. It's about, it's not just about the food. It's about combating loneliness and building those connections that can make a real difference. And for Margaret, that connection came in the form of Sophia, a Meals on Wheels volunteer.
So Sophia's the one who got Margaret back into quilting.
Well, it's interesting, actually. Sophia, she didn't know anything about quilting. She just, one day she noticed Margaret had this unfinished quilt and she offered to help.
Wow, that's pretty brave, right? I mean, to jump into something you know nothing about.
Right. It seems like she was just really curious and wanted to connect with Margaret, on a personal level.
That's really cool. It's like, I don't know, it shows how powerful these relationships between different generations can be. But okay, I have to ask, that first quilting session, I mean, can you imagine? Margaret, this expert, and Sophia, totally new to it. Must have been a little awkward at first.
Oh, definitely. You can picture Margaret, she's used to doing things her way, being the expert, maybe a little unsure about accepting help. And Sophia probably feeling a little intimidated.
Like, whoa, what am I doing here?
Exactly, stepping way outside her comfort zone. But, despite that initial awkwardness, they found a rhythm.
So Margaret started teaching Sophia how to quilt.
Yes, but it wasn't just about the technical stuff. I mean, the cutting, the threading, all that. Margaret also started sharing the stories behind each quilt.
Oh, wow. Like what kind of story?
Well, we learned about the floral quilt she made for her daughter's wedding, the plaid throw for her husband's favorite armchair, and this amazing, colorful quilt filled with childhood memories that she made for her grandson.
Wow, that's incredible. So it was about so much more than just the craft itself. It was about passing on memories, traditions, a whole legacy.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting to think about what that was like for Margaret, sharing those stories.
To see someone from a younger generation appreciating her life's work, that must have been really powerful. What do you think stood out to her about that?
I think, for Margaret, it must have felt like this reawakening.
Like rediscovering herself through Sophia's eyes.
Yes. And, it wasn't just Sophia who benefited. Margaret found something too.
Like what?
Yeah.
What did she find?
Well, the source material suggests that those quilting sessions with Sophia weren't just about teaching. They were about Margaret rediscovering her own passion, her purpose. But before we go into that, I want to point something out, something I found really interesting. Is like that teaching, that sharing her craft, and all those stories behind each quilt. It really had this huge impact on Margaret. It wasn't just passing on the knowledge, but it was like she was reconnecting with her own creative side.
Yeah, like that spark was always there, and Sophia just kind of helped bring it back to life.
Exactly. And it really makes you think, right? Like sometimes the most unexpected things can lead to the most fulfilling experiences. Have you ever had something like that where someone kind of reignited an old interest you thought was gone?
That's a good question. I used to play the piano when I was younger, but I haven't touched it in years. Maybe it's time to dust it off and see what happens.
There's research that shows that being creative, whether it's quilting, painting, or even gardening, can be really good for older adults.
In what ways?
Well, for women, studies have shown that it can boost brain function, improve your mood, and even help with stress. And it gives you this sense of accomplishment, a sense of purpose, which can be really important when you're dealing with changes in your health or, maybe feeling less connected to people.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Margaret's story actually lines up with what scientists are finding out.
Exactly. But before we move on, there's something I want to mention that really stuck with me.
Earlier you were talking about how Margaret's story kind of makes us think about how we see aging as a society.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, do we maybe underestimate what seniors are capable of?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. We often focus on what people lose as they get older, like physical abilities or their roles in society. But we forget about all the wisdom and the experience they have to offer. Margaret's story really shows that aging isn't just about decline, it's about like changing and starting new things.
There's like this whole idea that being young is the only time you can be valuable. It's not true. Margaret's story shows us that getting older can bring this whole new perspective, this deeper understanding that makes life richer, not just for her, but for the people around her too.
Exactly. Her story challenges those ideas we have about aging. Her passion for quilting, coming back later in life, it becomes this way for her to connect with people, to be creative, to make a difference in her community. It's like proof that you can find purpose and fulfillment at any age.
And it's not just her. Think about all the other seniors in the quilting circle. They found that same purpose and connection through their shared passion. It really makes you see how important it is to create spaces where seniors feel valued and engaged, where they can use their talents and share what they know.
That's a crucial point. We need to look past those stereotypes about aging and see the potential that's there. And organizations like Meals on Wheels, they play such a big role in that by providing not just food, but that connection and sense of belonging that we all need.
Remember what Margaret said? It's not just about making quilts. It's about making connections. That quote's been with me this whole time.
It's so true, isn't it? And it goes beyond just quilting. It's about what it means to be human. We all want connection. We want to feel like we have a purpose, like we belong.
And those things don't just disappear when you get older. They might even become more important as you face the changes and challenges that come with aging. Margaret's story reminds us that those connections can pop up in the most unexpected places. And even the smallest act of kindness can create this ripple effect, bringing joy and purpose and a sense of belonging.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. What are some things you do, maybe everyday things, that could actually be opportunities for connection and purpose? Maybe a hobby you've forgotten about, a skill you'd love to share, or even just a desire to get more involved in your community.
Think about Margaret's journey. What speaks to you? What are you curious about? What talents or passions have you maybe put on hold? This deep dive has shown us that it's never too late to rediscover those things, to connect with people, and to make a real difference in the world.
And if you're looking for a way to get started, check out Meals on Wheels. You never know. You might just be the spark that ignites someone else's passion, just like Sophia was for Margaret.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Margaret's incredible story. We hope it's given you some new insights into the power of connection, the importance of purpose, and the amazing potential that exists within all of us, no matter how old we are.